Hey, Tati here, and welcome to Calmly Coping. I am here today with Theresa Lear Levine, and today we're going to be talking about the emotional freedom technique, how that can apply to high functioning anxiety, as well as more about her and what techniques she uses to help women. So, can you tell us more about yourself?
Yeah, of course, Tati. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here and to be able to speak with your audience today. So I'm a 43-year-old mom of four boys. I live in Maryland between Baltimore and DC area. And I kind of have this lifelong love of learning and personal development. I would attribute that partially to my ADHD. It makes me constantly curious and interested in diving into new things. And I have been helping women for over 25 years to work on all four of their bodies: the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, and the physical. And EFT is a tool that is really at the heart of what I'm doing in my work right now, and something that I became very passionate about when I learned about it because of how much it helped me. And once I felt that difference versus other therapies or modalities or things that I had done in the past, I just wanted to share it as much as I possibly could.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting. So, can you tell us more about what got you started on that journey?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you take all of the crazy things that life throws at you. I've been married, divorced, married again. I have four kids. I have had many businesses and iterations of my own business. I've been through car accidents and other personal traumas and all of that kind of stuff. And when you take all that together, and I think most people can relate, we've all been through our own kind of soup of things that have happened to us in life. And I have high functioning anxiety and ADHD, and I mentioned that one before, but you put it all together and then you get to a point in life where you're trying to figure out kind of how you got to this point, and you realize that it's no one thing that really kind of shaped you or got you where you are, but
Hmm.
rather a whole bunch of things. And for me, it was being able to see things through the lens of the emotional freedom technique, things that I'd been through previously, things that I had learned before, things that I thought I understood, to be able to see them in a whole new way when my body, my nervous system, and everything else was regulated around those things. That really kind of got me to where I am right now in working with energy psychology and helping people understand their energy and what that all amounts to on a day-to-day basis with us. And yeah, it's just I'm always interested in learning new things and helping apply them to the challenges that we have every day that we really want to make tangible progress with, and not just have ideas about, or suggestions that we don't follow through on, but really real ways to manifest and bring to fruition the things that we want for our lives.
Mm. Yeah, and I totally agree with what you say that we all have our own experiences or things that shape who we are and where we essentially become or like where we go to.
Yeah,
And it's not necessarily always one specific thing, but it can be like the culmination of all of those experiences. And I heard you mentioned a few terms there. So you mentioned EFT, which we had talked about before, but I'd love to hear more about, and also
of course.
energy psychology. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So EFT is a form of energy psychology. So, probably the easiest thing for me to do is to explain what EFT is, because I do not presume that other people know what it is. I didn't know what it was, you know, some time ago. And now that I do, everything has changed. So, EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques, and it has some unique attributes to it, but it's also super logical, and it's also completely backed by science. So it's this blend of modern psychology and psychotherapy with ancient Chinese wisdom, things that have been around for thousands of years and that have been used more traditionally in Eastern medicines and things. So the body has these invisible channels in it called meridians, and that's how our energy flows. And when something happens and doesn't process like properly through our body, then we get these energetic blockages, and those happen at these different meridian endpoints. So these meridian channels are the same places in our body that, like, if you were to visit an acupuncturist or go for dry needling or have a deep tissue massage, they would be accessing those same points on your body to release pain, typically physical pain in the cases of those types of professionals. And they'd also likely, unless you're getting the massage, be using needles to do that, to really kind of get into those places. Now with EFT, there's no needles, which is a relief to most people. And you're just literally tapping with your fingertips on these points of the body. So the common points for EFT are the karate chop point, which is the side of your hand, like where you would think about breaking a board, and the top of the head, all around the eye. So the eyebrow point where the hair begins, the side of the eye, under the nose, under the lips, and the collarbone area, as well as under the arm, like where your bra strap would come around your body if you're a woman. So those 8 points and the karate chop point are the main ones used in traditional EFT. We have tons of meridian points on our body, but it was found that that particular combination could really handle the release of almost any kind of pain you put up against it. So EFT can work on physical pain as well as emotional pain. Essentially anything that you can feel can be released through this combination of talking about it with the psychological part of the EFT and tapping the meridian endpoints, as well as it can be used to improve upon past. So if you have a past trauma or experience, a bothersome memory, that kind of thing, it can massively improve upon it, as well as anxiety. So those future things, those things that haven't happened yet, they might not ever happen, but we're still in our nervous system. It's like it's happening to us anyway. EFT helps to regulate the nervous system around all of those different things. And it sends signals directly to the amygdala. So that little almond-shaped part of the brain that is in control of our fight or flight impulses. That's where, that's what EFT works to help regulate. And so that we don't have that constantly running our decisions in our life, because that's kind of what ends up putting us in that constant feeling of survival mode. And so much of the things that were triggered around for fight or flight aren't really dangers anymore. You know, like back in the day, maybe like a saber-toothed tiger or something was coming and we actually needed to be worried and be on alert. And now we're in this like constant high state of alert over things that really are not life or death. And yet still our cortisol is pumping out, that stress hormone, and we're not feeling our best. So with EFT tapping, we can actually bring our cortisol levels way down. Like in 10 minutes of EFT tapping, you can bring that level down by up to 43%, which is huge. And that's going to lower stress everywhere. So even if the focus of your tapping round was a bothersome memory or a backache or something like that, bringing down your cortisol level and reducing your resistance and your stress brings it down everywhere for you. And EFT has a really, really cool thing that people have been studied. They call it borrowed benefits. But essentially, when you tap on one thing, other things improve too. So sometimes, like if I'm working with a client and they show up and they have like a cold or a headache or something at the beginning of the session, we might be working on money blocks or a past trauma or something. But at the end of the session, when I ask them how that headache is or how their symptoms are, they've also improved. So, and it also works amazing for me as the practitioner or for other people who are practitioners, because we get those borrowed benefits also. So whereas a lot of therapists and psychologists and things can feel really run down, or like their energy has been really tapped into when they go hard and they work with a lot of clients throughout the day, EFT practitioners tend to feel more energized and uplifted because we actually get to have those borrowed benefits. They've done tons of studies. It's amazing. Nobody really quite knows why it works, but it does. And it's pretty awesome. So we get to bypass that, that part of the brain that is usually accessed for talk therapy and go straight to releasing things on both a physical and emotional level with EFT. And that's why it's so effective when it works, when you're applying it to different things. And I'm trying to think what else you need to know about it. But, it also can affect our genes. So, I mean, going even deeper, like when we think about like new sciences, like epigenetics and things, we've previously thought that we didn't have any control over the way that our genes expressed themselves. But EFT tapping is actually being shown to help in changing the way that genes express themselves. So there's a lot of, really amazing applications for this practice, and a lot of really simple things that it can help with too.
Mm. Wow, it really sounds amazing, and you explained it really well. And I like that approach, like you said, of bypassing that talk therapy component, and it's more going into the physical. And I know that emotions are often stored in our bodies physically. So I'm curious if that has anything to do with that connection there.
It absolutely does. I mean, when we have something that happens to us in the past, so let's say that you've been through a traumatic event, and it can make it even something common, like, I don't know, maybe you were bit by a dog when you were younger or something. So now you're afraid of dogs. Your body is, kind of holding the score on that one, and it's not releasing that anxious energy around that. So that now when you see a dog, you're automatically in that fight or flight state and you're feeling scared, like you need to get away, even though absolutely nothing is happening to you with that dog. Maybe you see it across the street or, in a cage even or something, but still your body is reacting as if there's a threat right now. And when you can regulate that part of it, you can show up in a completely different way. And you can really have a lot less fear, anxiety, stress, all of those things. And I'm sure you understand how this is from working with people, but like once you peel back one layer, then you get to see the next thing. And just like the all around consciousness gets raised and just amazing things start to happen. There's this really, really positive ripple effect there. And the body does need to be involved in the true resolution of anything that's really bothering somebody. That's not to say that talk therapy isn't incredibly valuable, though. It's just that a lot of times people come up against the same things over and over again with talk therapy because it hasn't completely worked its way out of their system.
Mm. And so, how would somebody who's struggling with anxiety start to implement or use EFT? Because I know you mentioned the tapping, and there's those different points.
Yeah. So I'm definitely going to be giving your listeners something where they can watch some videos and do some things along with me. But let's just say, for instance, that you're feeling overwhelmed and anxious today. It's as simple as starting on that karate chop point and tapping. And I know you do a video version too, don't you, of your podcast?
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. So I suggest if you're listening to the audio, head on over and watch the video. And that way you can really see what we're doing here. But I would start by tapping on that karate chop point on the side of my hand.
Hmm.
And we use a setup phrase. So in this case, maybe you're saying something like, even though I'm feeling really anxious today, I love, accept, and forgive myself. EFT is all about kind of finding that love, acceptance, and forgiveness around the feeling, whether it's towards yourself or someone else, a past situation, what have you. And you do that 3 times, the setup statement. So you can say the same thing 3 times, or you can do something different. Even though I'm really overwhelmed today, I honor that feeling and accept myself anyway. Things like that. So you're basically voicing what the problem is and suggesting that perhaps, and maybe you don't love, accept, and forgive yourself. Maybe you don't. I mean, that's a hard thing for people sometimes. Maybe it's just, I honor that feeling and I'm willing to explore it further. It doesn't have to be, we don't have to make giant leaps in what you're saying or feeling. We can make little steps if that makes it easier. So you
Hmm.
get those 3 setup phrases in, and then you go to that top of the head point. And now you're just talking about the feeling. So I am so anxious. Maybe you're trying to figure out where you're feeling it in your body. Like, I really feel it in my chest right now.
Hmm.
And you're going to the eyebrow point, and then you're going to the side of the eye. Maybe you're describing it further. So I'll just go through a few and just kind of naturally come across some things that maybe I would say if I was anxious. My chest feels really constricted right now. I feel like I can't get a deep breath. And I'm going to under the nose, just feeling so anxious and overwhelmed today. I'm going to under the mouth. I don't feel like I can get a break. And be negative. Like, let all the cruddy feelings out. Be negative, because we can't get those genuinely positive feelings to really come out until we release the negative. And
Hmm.
going to the collarbone point, this has been a really bad day. Whatever it is that you're feeling, Or, and then you go to under their arm point. I really wish things had gone differently so far today. And then you're going to go back through those points again, voice more of what you're feeling. And, if you're somebody that likes to curse, throw it in there, get into the negative, the feelings, be genuine about how you're feeling and be okay with the fact that it's not like some sugar coated, like, I'm going to try to be positive about my day and like fake celebrate when I feel like crap, just let it out. And then as you go to that third round through, if you're feeling like things are releasing a little bit, and usually they are, like if you assess yourself before this round and you say, how anxious am I? Like scale of 0 to 10, with 0 being like totally peaceful and calm, and 10 being like just anxious, pulling my hair out, freaking out. Assess yourself beforehand. And as you're going through this, you're going to feel a release. You really are. A lot of times there's yawning. You might want to stretch or, do something. Your energy's moving. You are moving energy in your body. You are really powerful. And as you get to that third round, maybe you're willing to think about the possibility that things might not be so bad, or that, you start to think, I can breathe a little deeper right now. And you're moving through the points again. I'm open to the possibility that I don't have to be this anxious. And you're just voicing the possibility to move towards that place or that feeling that you want to get towards. So whatever positivity feels right to let it in there. And, maybe some affirmations, that kind of thing, as long as they don't feel like too much of a leap. And then when you get to that end of that third round, really just take a nice deep breath in through the nose and a nice exhale out through the mouth, and then revisit that 0 to 10 scale and see where you are. And with EFT, you always want to work on the thing that is most bothersome for you at that time. So if you're trying to think about something to tap on, what's bugging you the most right now? What's causing you the most pain? What's really sticking out right now? Tap on that, see what comes up, tap on the next thing. It's that whole, peeling back the layers, see what comes up, maybe make yourself a couple notes. I noticed that. What did I notice? What's left of that feeling? Go in again. And it can be really helpful to work with somebody on that, just to have that different perspective or that guidance through that. Sometimes, we're all kind of useless when it comes to working on ourselves, but that's where I feel like EFT is different, because we have a lot of power to work on ourselves with it. We just have to be able to voice the feeling. But you know what? Even when you can't voice the feeling, just thinking about it, you can literally, like, I've had people that I've worked with that have been trying to get over fear of flying and things. Maybe they're in a situation where they can't voice it or they don't want to because they're, not nervous, embarrassed, or,
Mm.
self-conscious. And so you can literally be sitting somewhere and you can tap points on your fingers, use your thumb to tap the side of your finger. The sides of the fingers have great meridian points in them. People don't really notice. They're not going to wonder what you're doing. Kind of like if you're sitting there tapping your face, people might be like, what is she doing? But, I've gotten over it at this point, but it was a little weird at first. Tap the sides of your fingers and think about what you're, going through while thinking about tapping the areas. It's actually really effective. Also, the visualization of tapping. I prefer the physical tapping and voicing the words with, honestly, as much passion and emphasis as you can put behind the things that you're feeling. But when you don't have that opportunity, you still have the ability to move the energy and to change the way that you're feeling. And once you do it on something tangible, like feeling really stressed in the moment or a headache or something like that, you have no idea how powerful you are until you move the energy like that and you feel different in a few minutes. It's so empowering. And that kind of empowerment leads you to do more and work on bigger things and work on the less tangible things. If you're working on an old trauma, it's not going to show up in your life as a lot having changed until you come up against the things that might normally trigger you, or that might put you into the state that now you won't be put into because you've done the work. But with a headache, a backache, stress, anxiety, like, you can get some pretty tangible, easy to feel results really quickly. And then you're going to trust the process a lot more.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. And I love how simple and actionable it is and accessible for people to try on their own, and how it combines that acknowledgement and labeling of how you're feeling, because I think that's a very important part. And like you had mentioned, it can be, I think it can be difficult sometimes for people to acknowledge the negative and maybe wanting to focus on like going straight to the positive. I just want to feel better.
Right.
But I think often that's a necessary part of moving through and working through whatever is coming up. And I love that process of starting with and just being honest and getting it all out, and then checking in with yourself and assessing, uh, do you notice a difference, or are there different things that are coming up as, like you said, you're peeling back those layers?
Yeah. Things transform and change as you work through it.
Yeah. So I'm curious, let's say if there's somebody who's listening who's struggling with that high functioning anxiety. I think a lot of times what they struggle with can be that difficulty with making time for self care, and, that drive to always be busy and doing more. So, how would you suggest somebody start with like a practice like EFT or anything else when they're in that place?
Well, there's a lot of things to think about with that, and I've been through most of them on my own. So I totally understand what you're saying. And there can be worthiness issues with not wanting to put that time aside for ourselves. So that might be something to tap on. And also, if you're just somebody that feels like you can't slow down, or you don't want to yet, or you're just at the beginning stages of working on your high functioning anxiety, you can do this process while you're driving your car. Like, you can, I have oftentimes used my karate chop point on my hand and like karate chop my steering wheel while I'm driving with the other hand, and either thought my way through the points, or, you're driving with one hand, you're tapping with the other. It's a little different than the whole pat your head and rub your belly thing that we used to try to do when we're kids. But, it's safe, and it's not going to cause you any issues. And a lot of times, if you're somebody that has road rage or anything like that, it's a great time to do it. It's a great time to voice your opinions. Another great time to do it, if you're somebody that just is busy all the time and is having a hard time making time for yourself, is if you have the habit of complaining or ranting or picking up the phone to call somebody and kind of dump out about your day or what's going on in your life, which, can have its benefits. I'm not a fan of complaining, but complaining with a purpose, like when you tap while you're doing it, you're releasing something. So I have this habit of like, I will not call and complain or have a negative conversation with people without at least just tapping my chest or my collarbone point while I'm doing it, and knowing that I am at least making some kind of a positive impact on my nervous system while I am like dumping out whatever's going on. And then I've actually resolved something at the end of it, instead of feeling like picking up the phone and calling somebody else afterwards to say the same story. So, there's ways that you can fit this in, and there's amazing, you could do a tapping meditation for sleep right before you go to bed. Like, maybe you're not willing to do something for yourself until you've already like gotten in bed and turned off the lights. Well, tapping is an amazing way to sleep better. I know that a lot of times high functioning anxiety and insomnia go hand in hand. So
Hmm.
it's a great way to sleep better. And there's really no place that you can't kind of fit this in. You can be, I mean, if you have kids like I do and you're constantly going places and shuttling people around or whatever, or find yourself sitting on the side of a soccer field or something and trying to do something, just do the fingertip tapping thing like I talked about, and think about all the stuff that's bothering you right now while you're doing it. And you'll be amazed at the difference in the way that you feel. It sounds so simple, and I wouldn't have believed it, but you'll feel so much different if you just try, putting some tapping into your life for 5 or 10 minutes a day.
Yeah, I love all those suggestions and how you make it accessible, that like, even when you're driving the car or talking on the phone when you're already maybe letting things out, you can kind of, I guess, multitask or have that release in that way. And I'm curious, I know you said that they don't really know like why or how this works. If if you have any ideas, like what do you think it is about the tapping? Is it the repetitive motion? Is
Well,
it
we understand why tapping works. We don't understand why
okay?
the borrowed benefits work. Like, we don't understand
Oh,
why, if
okay.
I'm working on you on something, I am getting a benefit,
Okay, gotcha.
and I'm feeling better overall at the end of it. But we know that the energy flows through these meridian channels, and that
Mhm.
when it gets stuck, it's it's the cause of all of our pain,
Mhm.
physical or emotional, the stuck, unmoving, blocked energy. So tapping those meridian points is like saying, hey, energy, like get unstuck from there. And it helps it to get moving. And then you put that together with the voicing of the issue, which helps the energy to get unstuck and be like, ah, okay, that's why I'm here. And I don't want to be here anymore, stuck. I'm going to move. It it's scientific completely. And it's at the roots of our self-sabotage and our limiting beliefs and our fears and our phobias, and all of those things can be so easily resolved with this technique. I really feel like it could change the world. I mean, more people don't know about it than know about it, but the numbers are increasing exponentially. And it's really something that could change the way that everybody shows up.
Yeah, no, I love that. And so you mentioned that the energy gets stuck and it's not able to flow. So then what happens when you tap that allows that energy to flow?
It's kind of like shaking it loose.
Mhm.
It's it's like waking up that area and putting that together with the psychological stuff, and
Mhm.
it gets the flow going again.
Mhm.
Um, what you say is important too. I mean, I'm giving very simple terms of how to do this here because
Mhm.
I want it to be accessible. And there's no reason why people can't work on their own simple things on their own. But when it gets into more complex things, the wording gets a little bit more important, and working with the professional is going to get better results. But it our energy is everything. I mean,
Mhm.
literally. And when we have a better way to control it and transform it and move it, then there's really nothing we can't do.
Mhm. Yeah, no, and that's great that it can be used for both the psychological and physical struggles.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same. It's no different than getting energy moving with dance or with,
Mm.
other modalities that get you moving, or taking different stances or things in order to change the energy and the way that it's flowing.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because I know that especially with, like you mentioned, trauma before, when working through trauma, because it's largely stored in the body, things like you mentioned, like dance and other types of movement can help. And so I think it's interesting to hear that it doesn't even have to be that complex. It could be something just through that tapping that you can get those benefits.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Would you say are there any other things? I know that you said it's more complex, but anything else that comes to mind for somebody who's just learning about EFT, or anything else that you provide support with?
Well, I'd say if you're just starting out, and especially knowing the audience having a lot of people with high functioning anxiety, that whole overachiever mentality and everything else, don't get overwhelmed with it. It's a modality that can literally be used on almost anything. So it's easy to like start making your list of like a gazillion things that you want to improve upon with it. And that would not be helpful. So,
Mhm.
like I said before, just work on the thing that's top of mind that day, maybe just one thing, and then see what comes up for you. Put it aside until the next day or the next week or whatever fits into your schedule, and then go at it again. The other way you could do it would be to do it when something feels heavy or really like it's bogging you down, and to do it right in that moment. Anytime that you can do this in the moment that something is bothering you is going to be like the best, because you want to stir up that emotion. So if we were working on that fear of dogs, for instance, I would want to do everything I can to get you in that feeling of the anxiety that you have when you're around a dog. I'm not going to try to downplay it. I want to get that all right on the surface, because that's when we can move it up and out. We can give it that voice and we can clear it out of the energetic system. There's a gazillion different meridian points. Like we have a bunch more than what we use. Roger Callahan was one of the first people that was doing the work with this, in the different touch therapies that he did. And he used to come up with specific algorithms for people's problems based on what they were struggling with, and then the body parts that correlate with the emotions and the body parts and all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't until Gary Craig, who's known as the founder of EFT, realized that this combination of those 8 points that I mentioned before could be used to pretty much release anything, that it became accessible to the public and free and available to anyone. Believe it or not, it used to be, and this is like back in the 80s, it was like $10,000 to get a specific algorithm for an issue that you had. So it was very common for, CEOs and people, like if they had fear of flying or something, they would pay that very easily because it made their job easier. It made their
Mm.
life easier. It took care of whatever the fear, the phobia was that they had, and they were done with it. I mean, because once you get to the root of the issue, it's not coming back.
Mhm.
Unlike we said with like talk fit therapy, where people might come up against the same thing over and over again, we get to the root of that problem for your fear of flying or your fear of spiders or whatever it is. It's not coming back. If it does come back, we did not get to the root. So EFT is very it's long term. So he had these algorithms and he would sell them, and he would train people too in his techniques. It was $100,000 to get trained
Wow.
to learn this and to like be a practitioner and do this. And so it was not very accessible. But then in the 90s, Gary Craig made it available to everybody and realized, that we could use this combination. So there are other ways to do this, of course. And there's other ways to work on trauma and anxiety and the stress that we feel. But for me, I have found this to be the simplest and the most effective. And it's also not traumatizing. I know there's a lot of hype around like EMDR and therapies like that right now, especially since I guess it was like Prince Harry or somebody had said they were using it. So I know a lot of people reach out to me and, is this EMDR? I'm like, no, it's EFT. But EMDR can be very traumatizing. It's a hard form of therapy to do for a lot of people, and it does work. But from my perspective, I want to be as gentle as I can in helping people to overcome their obstacles, because I feel like that's going to make people want to do more versus it being really difficult to overcome something um, and shying away from it. I feel
Mm.
like therapy and working on ourselves should be some of the best spent time that we have in our day. And it should be enjoyable, and it should make us feel like we're growing and changing in positive ways. And we should want more.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I love that perspective. And just to get more context, so is EFT something that, is it like a modality, a type of therapy? Is it separate from therapy, or, how is it typically utilized?
Yes.
So all of the above.
Yes, and it really depends on who's using it
Mm.
too, and what the different combination of things that it's being used with are. I know a lot of psychotherapists use it, and I do a lot of chakra-based work. I love working with like the energy system and the engineering there, along with the release through EFT. And there's so many ways that it can be applied. That yes, it's a modality. Yes, it's a therapy. And there's so many different combinations of ways that it can be used and applied.
Right. Yeah. And what comes to mind for me, because I know we talked about the emotional piece, is like the physical piece. Because I know a lot of times, especially with anxiety, that shows up as like physical tension,
Yeah.
or even like stomach discomfort or chest pain. Like, um, how would you suggest, let's say, if there's no actual um, emotions or verbiage, I guess, surrounding what somebody's feeling, how would they use EFT to address physical pain? Or would it just be focused on like, this is how I'm feeling physically?
So, like something like a back pain or something
Yeah.
like that. Okay,
Mm.
I'm just going to work with an example because it's a little easier to speak to. So, let's say you're having pain in your lower back. You could be as simple as just saying and doing that whole setup thing with the karate chop point. It could be as simple as, even though I have this pain in my back, I love, accept, and forgive myself. And then as you're going through the points, I like to think about pain, like really like ask yourself some questions about the pain. Does the pain have a temperature? Is it hot? Is it cold? Does the pain have a texture? Is it grainy? Is it sharp? Does it have a color to it? Like when you close your eyes and you think about that pain that you're feeling, what do you see? Does anything come to mind? Whatever that is should be part of your tapping round and should have a voice and be explored further. But if you don't feel like you're good at that, and I air quote because I think, everybody knows themselves and that, you can figure this part out. But
Mhm.
if you feel like you're not, it can be as simple as, tapping the points and just saying, this pain in my lower back, this pain in my lower back, and saying the same thing while you're just focusing on the pain.
Mm.
Just focus on the thing. It's important to focus on what you're trying to release while you're tapping. So you don't have to, be a poet or be eloquent or anything else in order to make this really effective. I mean, I love writing tapping rounds for people, and I love working with people and getting in all the little nuances and aspects and things, but you can make equally amazing breakthroughs without all those frills.
Mm. Yeah, no, that's super helpful. I'm probably gonna test out some tapping myself this week.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to tell you where to go with it if you have things that you're working on.
So, do you have any, as we wrap things up, do you have any final words on tapping or anything else for our listeners?
Sure. I mean, just my best advice or my biggest wish would just be to try it. So I'm going to give your listeners a really cool ebook that I've put together that has video tapping rounds where you can try this. You can pick a subject from one of the videos that resonates with you and press play and see what happens. And you'll find that by going to theresasfreegift.com. My name is with an H, so it's THERESAS, freegift.com. And I'll send that to you right away and you can give it a try and just try it. I know that people can be super skeptical about things like this, but this is so accessible. And again, it's backed by science. This is like scientifically proven. There are tons of studies out there on EFT. Feel free to look them up or reach out to me if you need me to send you to different studies on how it affects all the things that we've talked about today. But the best way to decrease the skepticism and increase the good feelings that you're having in your life is to give it a go
Mm.
and just see how one good thing leads to another good thing and what changes. Because for me, it's been several years on this journey, and I'm still amazed when I look back at the way that I used to show up a few years ago versus now. And it wasn't that I wasn't intelligent or in the know or didn't, know better then, but there's a difference between knowing what you need to do and being able to do it.
Mhm.
And EFT was able to really bridge the gaps for me in the things that I felt like I couldn't make happen in my life. Whether it was showing up differently as a parent, like not yelling at my kids or going crazy on them when, they would irritate me or whatever, and being able to control my emotions there, or whether it was breaking through money blocks and growing my business and dealing with age old patterns and neural pathways and things that had been really, really routed in there for a long time. It helped me with all of that, and like my last home buying experience. I actually recorded a podcast for my own show today about that. And like, I was like, everybody buying or selling a home should be able to do EFT because that will pitch you up against so many things that
Mm.
are, blocks for you. And so much comes up during that time. And it was a lifesaver for me and, just huge. And, if you're in business for yourself, those blocks that come up that make you fear success and fear failure and sabotage yourself and never quite get where you want to go. This is what will change that psychological reversal for you. Because when you are in that psychological reversal, it's like your batteries are in backwards. It's like, even though you know what you need to do, what you need to carry out, it doesn't happen. So when you can release that blockage and get that energy flowing right, your whole life can change. So just try it.
Mhm. Yeah, and I love that you brought up that people can be skeptical and, I tend to sometimes be that skeptic because I like to
Me
see
too.
like, does this actually work? And you definitely transformed me into seeing the benefits and also, all of the things that you had brought up of how it can help you. And I think, I like that visual of like peeling back the layers. I kind of visualize it an onion that like, as you go deeper and deeper, you're getting to the root of like what's really causing those struggles. So it makes a lot of sense.
It does. It does. I was skeptical too. I didn't start off the journey thinking like, oh, this is the perfect modality. It's going to change my life. I was like, really? Like, I mean,
Mhm.
because when I had seen this technique used before I adopted it, it was for things like war trauma and PTSD for like really heinous things. And it was for Olympians using it for performance
Mm.
and things. I mean, I told you we can use this on anything. I mean, people are learning how to, run faster as Olympians and things by using EFT. You will see people on the sidelines at, NFL football games tapping. Wonder what they're doing? They're tapping.
Oh,
Like
wow.
it's it's used by the best of the best to get better. And when I discovered it and saw it used in those ways, I was like on the couch breastfeeding a baby or something. Like I was like, this doesn't apply to me. Like this is not my life. And I don't know what this modality has to do with my life. It wasn't until I saw it at a retreat and it was just simply being used for anxiety and stress. Like we were being taught how to apply it for just simple everyday anxiety and stress. And you know what? It helped mine immensely in that hour that I learned about it in the retreat. And that then and only then did I connect the dots. And I was like, oh, so this can do this for that. And it can do for all these other things, all of this too. And then it was like kind of like that mind blown emoji. And I was just like, okay, I got it. Like, get me in on this. I need to learn as much as I can.
Yeah.
And I haven't turned back since.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, and I love what you said that, it's not that you weren't intelligent or whatever before, you needed that thing to bridge the gap. And I think a lot of times it's those tools that provide us with that support to make and take the next step forward. Because a lot of times we can often get in our own way when we're not aware of what's affecting us or like understanding, but then also, like you mentioned, like I guess moving that energy so that you can move forward.
Yeah. Sometimes we got a lot to work on. And, it's not enough sometimes to see a therapist for 45 minutes a week or
Mhm.
whatever. So being able to take things into your own hands in the interim, or I mean, gosh, since the pandemic has hit, it's really just hard to get therapy in general. Like
Yeah.
there's and therapists need therapy right now because of
Yeah.
all the therapy they have to give. So this is something we can all do for ourselves in conjunction with, or in addition to, or instead of other forms of therapy and still feel really good like we should be able to.
Hmm. Awesome. Yeah. So I definitely learned so much today, and I'm sure that my listeners did as well. So, where can people find you? I know you mentioned having a podcast, and I'm going to leave a link to that free gift as well that you mentioned in the description.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty easy to Google. If you just Google Theresa Lear Levine, you can find me on whatever platform you like. But I also have a website, teresalearlevine.com. And I will definitely, be in touch with you and, send you some great stuff if you're going to that free gift link as well, the teresasfreegift.com. So that's where I would suggest starting because that will lead you to all the other good stuff.
Okay. Perfect. Well, thanks so much for being on the podcast today. I enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you, Tati. I really appreciated being here. And I love what you're doing with the world, with high functioning anxiety and everything else. I think you have an amazing show, and I'm honored to be part of it today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.